Hey, 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 lovely people. How are we all doing? I just realized that my background is completely screwed up. Let me see if I can fix that. Quick. It'll do. Okay. Hi, William. I've got like an annoying new emoji react screen inside of my Streamlabs OBS, and it's triggering me. Hi, Sheila. Hi, Nicole. How is everyone doing on this beautiful day? Prediction is here as well. Good to see you too. Okay, we got everyone for the stream. Paula, hi, how are you doing? Good to see you here as well. I think we have everything collected for the stream already, so I've come prepared for once. How about that? And I think in 2 hours we're gonna get together with the community as well and watch the PlayStation live stream as well. That's gonna be good. So I wanna kind of kick these streams off with like a question, right? And I think I was kind of thinking what the question could be. Like, I'm thinking to keep it in line with like the PlayStation Showcase that's happening a little bit later, right? Let's say, what is your favorite PlayStation exclusive? Or PlayStation game? Or like PlayStation, like game that you played on a PlayStation, basically. It doesn't have to be exclusive. Fire away some favorites. Oh, thanks for asking, Nicole. Yeah, I'm doing good. Thank you. I gotta think about that one. You know, I was gonna ask a question regardless, but I don't know. So I've had a PlayStation up until the Xbox 360, and then I switched to Xbox. And I think I gotta say, I was a big fan of Jak and Daxter. And I think it's a rough one. I was about to say like Jak 3, right? Like the more open world GTA kind of style was really cool. I love that game for it. Jak X Racing or whatever that game was called, that was also pretty good. I love that too. Nicole's saying Little Big Planet. I don't think I've ever played it. Such a cute game though. That's a good choice. William is going for Uncharted. Nice. I am so... It's kind of weird. Like the more that I think about it, like the more uncultured I feel when it comes to games. So like the more I'm just slipping out of like being familiar with like the big games, right? Because never played any Uncharted games, never played The Last of Us. Oh, so yeah, what was the question again? So the question was, I'm gonna simplify it a little bit. What was your favorite PlayStation game that you've played? Oh, Nicole is saying my childhood, and this is in reference to Little Big Planet, may have started up my love for stylized. That's awesome. So we're getting to the roots of some artistic insights for people. I'll give a deep cut. Revolt. I don't know if anyone knows that game. Just PlayStation games, yeah. Because we're doing it in light of like the PlayStation Showcase that's happening later tonight. So I'm trying to keep it in theme. If you never had the chance to play like a PlayStation game, like feel free to cheat a little bit. Yeah, I don't know if anyone here knows Revolt at all. It was a game where you drive around like RC cars. And I think that also like inspired Nvidia demo as well. Like that came out like relatively recently, like a showcase thing. I mean, I'm not gonna say that Revolt was like the sole inspiration for that, but oh, Andrea's always been interested in Until Dawn. Yeah. Those games I love to watch. Right? Like because they're so cinematic and they're set up as like these cinematic storylines. I love to watch those games because of that reason. Good choice though. Love that. I just realized that I'm going for like very old games. What was the last game I played? So I did something ridiculous, right? Like when the well, it wasn't when it came out, but like the PS4 was out for a little bit, right? And I was like, I wanna chill in the sofa, like play on a console again, right? So what I did is I got a PS4, and then I bought it specifically for Horizon Zero Dawn. And then I played that game. It was awesome, and then I never played anything ever again on the PlayStation. Yeah, I did like it though. Like compared to always sitting in your chair, like in the PC. I just don't make enough time for it. That's the real issue. Until Dawn is great to see the different people's reactions because there's so many choices. Yeah, exactly. That's awesome. Let me see if I can do some stuff at the moment. Oh, okay. Yeah. Never mind. I'll have to do it after the stream. So now the saying, been practicing environment prop art daily for the last 2 months, and your podcast is the perfect company for it. Absolutely love it. Cheers, man. Oh, that's awesome. I love that the podcast brings in so many people, even though we've not been doing it for like the past 2 years. Andrea, yeah, that's true. That's true. PlayStation games are getting more frequent and coming to PC. That's nice. We probably got some lurkers in the chat that are like heavily anticipating like a Spider-Man game or something like that. We're talking in the community before. Never. No, that's wrong actually. I did play Spider-Man games, but I played the old ones. I don't even know. PlayStation 1? PlayStation 2 maybe? I don't even remember. I can remember like a really old Spider-Man game though. So many games. Can't keep up with all of them. That's cool though. Yeah, I never played any Until Dawn. That always looked interesting because I love watching it, right? And then as Nicole is saying, like watching different people's reactions towards it. CS saying Journey. Yes. That looked and felt like it was an amazing journey. Even though, again, I didn't play it. I watched it. But even then, like you can tell, right? Like there's just like what do you say it? Like a wholesomeness. Like it's a very cohesive game. Like it's very well thought out and it's very deliberate in what it wants to achieve, right? Like the emotional impact that those games have, like, are awesome. I feel like, yeah, it's a different kind of genre, right? But like, It Takes Two was like a big favorite of ours as well. Like me and my girlfriend played that together, and that was awesome. That's also taking you on like a journey that's well worth it. For anyone that hasn't played it, you gotta check that out. Hi, Nicole. How are you doing? Good to see you back. Okay, thanks everyone for your input. Let's switch it over to some feedback then, shall we? Yes, here we go. Okay, so before we get into it, As always, feel free to shout like any feedback or like any comments or any ideas into the chat if you think like, hey, this could be interesting, or maybe think about this, right? Anything that can help the people that have shared their work to be looked at on stream, like I can add it and we can talk about it. Yeah, let's dive in. The first one is from Andrew Whiteman. I think this is going to be like a pretty short one because Andrew didn't really wanted like any specific feedback necessarily. However, I do want to point out some stuff that might help Andrew in this case. So the last thing that we discussed on stream was that Andrew made this chimney that we can see on the right. So this thing over here. But it was looking kind of flat, so now we have some displacement, like displacing the actual vertices and then like cleaning it up to be more low poly again. Which you can kind of see. You're getting like a more interesting silhouette, which is awesome. The only thing that you might need to be a little bit conscious of is the amount of polygons, right? Or like the poly count of the object or how dense it is. But yeah. Like that's the main purpose of this, right? Is focusing on like the actual silhouette and just changing that up, because the surface itself is not that important. It's more about like the actual silhouette rather than like the surface itself. And here we go again. Still can't spell silhouette correctly. So that's awesome. That's just like an additional point that I wanted to keep in mind. Like it's not about the interior phases, it's more about like the silhouette and the shape of the object, where it's really gonna help. And then the other thing, Andrew, what I wanted to highlight here, and I don't know, like I don't have that much information to go on, right? But you mentioned in your post on the community chat that you said one window done. And I'm making the assumption that if you have a house with like a couple of windows in it, you're gonna make all the windows unique. However, this is why I wanted to bring this up, right? Because I don't think you need to do that actually. So I'm gonna give you like a quick technique, and then we'll talk about like a more elaborate one as well. The quickest technique is to think about it as Lego pieces, right? Or modular pieces. That's like the industry term of it. So that if you made like one window, you can just replace all the other windows as well. And maybe even in this case, because it looks like a very uniform object, rotate it around, right? And that gives you the variation that you're looking for without having to make like a new asset for it necessarily. So that would be like reusing the same mesh for like all the windows on the building, right? That could be like a very easy way to get into it. What I would say, the more elaborate way, right? Which, depending on if you're comfortable with doing it or not, but this might also help you construct more than just a single window, is look into trim sheets. Where a trim sheet is basically just like a texture. I'm just gonna do like a section here, right? Make it a little bit more square. So this could be like an example of a trim sheet, right? And all a trim sheet does is you have like predefined sections that you can then map your geometry on top of, right? So you're gonna be laying out like your UVs in like straight strips that align with these trims, right? And what that does is it gives you one map that you can use on all the wooden surfaces, rather than making a window and then making a single door and then making like a bit of a wall and then making another wall. Like you can reuse the same kind of texture on all of it, because it shifts from you making a unique unwrap and like a unique texture for every object in your scene to making a texture that can be reused over like a lot of pieces, right? I am giving a very crude overview of it, right? We have, if you go on our website, beyondextend.com, there is under the guides or like the deep dive section, there's like a whole page on trim sheets, how you need to set that up and all that kind of stuff. So feel free to check that out. But that would like ease the burden of having to make like individual textures for all your assets, right? Because it might work for this one scene that you're doing, but if you want to make like a bigger scene, it'd be like you can't scale that up easily, right? So yeah, think about it, not necessarily for this one, but keeping in mind that this exists and might be like an interesting thing to discover in the future, or like to explore in the future. So the quick thing here is just one texture, multiple meshes. Right? This allows you to create like a multiple meshes with just that same kind of texture. Oh, thanks, Scott. Like if you want to check out the deep dives that we've created, like especially the one on trim sheets, it's going to be very relevant to this topic. You can just follow the link that Scott just added. Let me also catch up with the chat as well. So Jill is asking, I'm in big need of some help. How does one post for feedback or troubles? If I may ask, of course. Yeah, that's a very good question. The quickest way for now, because we kind of stick to like our community, right? So these are all people from our community that I'm giving feedback to. The quickest way to get your own feedback is to get into the community. And you can access that like the quickest way is to just follow the link on our website. If you go to beyondextend.com, you can follow the link over there. You could also join via YouTube membership, but you gotta make sure that your account is linked to Discord as well. So keep that in mind. Yeah, but that's pretty much it. As I said, I don't have that much context to go on here, right? So I'm basically just riffing of you saying one window done. And I'm assuming because you said like one window done, that you're doing them all unique, which you don't have to do to speed the whole process up. So yeah, some recap points, right? It's more like exploration points in your case. I would have a look at modular pieces. And potentially a trim sheet. But a trim sheet might be a little bit too advanced for you right now. I don't want to make any assumptions, but I'm just trying to save you like a whole bunch of headache, because trim sheets get really technical, right? So I want to kind of save you all that headache of having to like think about stuff a lot. So yeah, that would be more like exploration stuff for you to do. And thank you for sharing your work again, Andrew. All right, let's move along. Next up, we got Bendu. Let's see if we can get some context from what Bendu is working on. Thanks again for all the tips from last week. Here's an update on the scene. I've added a palisade and gave it a little bit vertex paint with the same bark material as the trees. I believe I tackled everything you suggested. The static mesh modeling in Unreal is very nice. Cheers, and looking forward to the feedback. Okay, so nothing really specifically asked here, so we're just gonna have a look at it. I like the palisade, you know, it kind of makes it feel like it's more of a village or like a town at the moment, which is awesome. So that is a great addition to the scene. That's nice. I think if you wanted to push it a little bit further, what you could do is have a gate in there as well, right? Because now you have the wall, but there's no actual structure to like open and close gates. You could have like a really like simple one, right? Like you could have like the kind of frame just being built over the top of it, and then you could have like some square doors just like jutting out with like some cool looking framing on the sides of it as well. Right, and then you could build it up in any way you want. But I think something simple, like a simple frame with like a door, and just to showcase that they can close it and open it whenever they wanted to, right? Oh my god. Gate wood looks sweet. I just wrote it as wood. Oh my god. Gate would look sweet. So that could be good. And that's just like reinforcing the whole idea. Let's see. Some other ideas. I'm not gonna go too far into like new ideas, right? Because I know that you want to finish it off. So what I'm gonna try to do instead is, and this is something that I generally like recommend everyone to do when you're in this later stage of the project, is to look at easy wins with minimal effort. So an easy thing here could potentially be that you make tree stumps, and all you need to do to generate those tree stumps is use textures and assets that you've already made and just cut down like, or like maybe just add like a tree stump here. You know, just scatter like a couple of them close to the wall so that you get like, it's called like a cause and effect, right? Where, or you can call it a cause and effect thing, where they needed like a bunch of logs. So you're probably expecting like a bunch of trees to be cut off because they needed those logs, right? Because they wanted to build this palisade. So that could be interesting. So I'm gonna write down some stuff here. Hello? Oh. All right, so we were talking about cut trees. Like tree stumps. Right? It could be cool. Could be very interesting. Maybe just to make the whole thing like a little bit more interesting. I like what you're doing with the curve in the road here. Right? I like that. Maybe you could apply the same kind of lesson here as well. Because from this point out, it's just literally straight. Right? And there's nothing really happening here. So what you could do is curve the road. I'm gonna give you a couple of options, right? Or if you want to keep it like this right now, maybe it could be cool to have like road tracks, right? Where you have like carts coming in and out of the city. Could be very cool to add that in there. Or a combination of the two, right? Road tracks? I don't know if that's right, but you get what I mean. Hey, Antonio! Nicole is saying even just a fallen log as well. Oh, yeah, that's a great one. Gonna add that to number 1. Fallen log. Yeah, because you got the assets already, right? So might as well make use of them and like recombine them in different ways where you could like you could also do oh, this would be even easier, right? So fallen log, log pile. Right? You could have like a couple of cut down trees and then like a log pile over here. There's like a random stack of logs. It's just waiting for people to be like hauled into the city. Would be like interesting. But yeah, back onto this road, like if you don't curve it, like maybe making it look more interesting than it does now. And it's just a little bit, right? Because I think the base is already like really solid with the textures that you have on it. But I think, yeah, if it's basically an indication on how often this road is used, right? So you could have some tracks in there. Could be cool. And then maybe even like add more organicness to the border between the grass and the dirt, right? I think you got a little bit of that going on. You could even push that. Andrea's saying it will look cool, but not necessarily. Like a medieval fire pit is added at the entrance. So when it gets dark, it gets lit. It could be cool. Yeah, I like that. I think let me have a look. Because there is light already. I just don't know. Let me see if there's some other screenshots. I don't know where the light is coming from currently. Oh. I think it's from nothing. So, great shout, Andrea. Great shout. I'm just gonna add like light sources, right? Hey, Sunny Day! Welcome to the chat. Happy to have you here. So, yeah, light sources for point lights, I guess. The reason why I'm adding this is because you can't have a point light without any asset that supports it. Right? So, if you add point lights in your scene, there needs to be like something to support that point light then. Because else there's going to be a disconnect, right? If you just have like floating lights in your scene. Yeah, I'm gonna have another quick look. Some of the previous images. Nah, they're all just floating point lights. Okay, cool. Yeah, I think that could be like a great addition. Yeah, some more ideas. As I said, not gonna spend too long on it. I think, honestly, like, the way that you have the trees rendered out right now looks already way better than we've seen last week. They do feel way more dense. I do... Oh... Man, I see... Okay, I see the issue that you're having here, and I had it myself as well. What fixed it? Okay, so I'm talking about, like, you have this green border, like, on your trees, and I can't remember what fixed it. I'm so sorry. Because I had that in my scene as well, and then I fixed it, I think? Or maybe it's because you're still running on 5.0 and 5.1 fixed it. Because I think I needed to update to 5.1 to get that fixed. I think. So yeah, just... I mean, you don't have to update, right? But like, be aware of these things, like showing up in your screenshots. If it is very sporadic that it happens and you manage to get screenshots without this effect ever appearing, you're good, right? You don't have to do an update. But yeah, just be careful. We're gonna add green light, even though it's not light. You know, I think it has something to do with either the virtual shadow maps breaking or the runtime virtual texturing breaking. Could be either or. Or I might be wrong. Yeah, this is nice though. Great job. I like what you did with like the slight adjustment to the roof as well. I think you can push it a little bit further. Yeah. Oh, wait. Oh, but you didn't change the silhouette though. That's the most important part. So the stuff that you're doing here looks nice, right? You're adding like more shape variation within the roof itself. However, the actual roof like doesn't change, right? And that's more what I meant last time. So you would, I mean, not that strong, right? It just needs to be like very subtle. Yeah, kind of like here. Right. Yeah, I think you can do the same thing with the molding tools inside of Unreal. Yeah, honestly, like the rest of it looks pretty sweet. Oh, there was one more thing. Another idea. Another quick one, right? Because you already have the assets for it. What if, and this is totally up to you, right? What if this is not a ruin? Maybe it is a ruin, but they're doing some work to it. Right? So, and what I mean by that is you can literally just strip out like some of the timber frames that you have here, move it over here and make like a scaffolding with it, right? Where you have like, I don't know. Like some sort of scaffolding. Right, you make it a little bit more organic. You got like kind of a ladder going up as well. You could potentially do some really cool stuff with it. And this would all just be like reusing the timbers from the houses, right? To create like these scaffolding pieces. I don't know if they actually use like a trim sheet or something like that. That would make it like way easier. Yeah, you could literally take out like this chunk like in Blender, right? Or even in the engine if it's a separate piece, and just like build these like interesting like scaffolding pieces out of it. Right, and then you have like one in the back as well, which could be pretty interesting. Right, and that allows you to do something more with that ruin, because the ruin right now, I don't know, right? I don't know what it is, but it kind of feels like it is there and it has like no relation to like the town surrounding it. So I feel that if you were to move in, like people would either like rebuild it, like Sonny is saying in the chat, right? Like to become like a future church, because usually in the medieval ages, like the main part of like the bigger towns was a church, right? Or you could do it the opposite way, where they have put up scaffolding and they're actually breaking down the church and then possibly like reusing it for like their own buildings, right? That's also very common, especially if you think about, I think it's the Hadrian Wall, which is like a large wall that was like built by the Romans in like the UK. A lot of that has been disassembled in the medieval age because they didn't need that wall anymore, and they started building houses with it. And it was just like local people, you know, like taking piles of rocks to make their own houses with it. I don't know if that's correct, but I'm not a history buff, but that's what I heard. So yeah, you could definitely do something like that. That would be interesting. Again, quick win, right? Very quick win. Yeah, nice one though. So let's do a recap. I'm gonna recap it very simply. Like, number 1 is focusing on the quick wins. Number 2 is... what is number 2? Like, small adjustments for composition? Like the road? And... I think these two is going to be the majority of it, right? Like... oh, the gate. I think the gate is definitely like a thing that you need to spend a little bit of time on, but it's definitely going to be worth it. It's like the cherry on top of the cake, right? Because you got that awesome looking wall without a gate, but I think that's going to be important. So yeah, that would be like a little recap on this. Yeah. And then it's just like polishing, you know, like putting the dots on the eye and like making it like a complete package wherever you can. Hey, Ahmed. Oh yeah, and then Andrea had some well, Andrea and Nicole had some really interesting ideas as well, with like the fallen logs and like the medieval fire pit, like to ground the lights in the scene, right? I think that's also going to be an important one. So I think the way that I would tackle it, I am gonna mess up these numbers. It's gonna make sense in a bit. So so these are the fire assets for the lights, right? I would probably do something like this. First, figure that out. You still have a choice within this, right? Like either you go the way of like, hey, I create additional assets, or go the opposite way and you just remove the lights, right? Because you don't necessarily need them, but I can see why you added them, because they add like little nice pops of color. So yeah. Then I would probably do the gate next. I think that's also going to be pretty important. And then this is going to be like a shared third place. Thank you for sharing your work, Bendu. And best of luck. This is already looking like freaking awesome. I love what you're doing with it. And looking forward to seeing how it evolves. Keep us in the loop. Hi, Gav. How's it going? Next up, we got Emmanuel. Emmanuel is making this arcane Okay, an inspired piece. Looking for some general feedback. It is looking quite nice. I'm constantly looking back and forth between the ref as well to see if I can spot anything, because we're getting pretty close here, huh? Getting pretty close. I think the big thing that I'm noticing, well, quote unquote big, like the thing that stands out to me is you're getting super close with like all the materials and all the values, and the lighting is correct and all that stuff, but it's kind of missing, it's still kind of missing that softness, right? I think we kind of talked about that last time as well, where you could like increase the bloom to make everything just like slightly hazy. I think you've done a bit of that. But what I'm also thinking is that it could be interesting if you maybe play around with like localized fog, but like a very subtle localized fog. Right? Like especially, let me bring up the concept again. There seems to be like areas like here. Like especially on these pillars, because you got the light coming in from the right, so it kind of hits those areas like really nicely. I think if you wanted to add like a slight fog or something like that, right? Because you kind of get that blurriness, that blurry volumetric kind of stuff going on here. Compared to, oh wait, what if we... Okay, let's see. What if we kind of line it up, right? Oh, actually, this is a good... It's a good exercise. Let me just bring it in. Let me not be silly. Let's get the concept in and just overlay it, right? What's better than that? Hey, Paul! Oh, the hell happened here? Let's put this to 20% or something like that. Let's see if we can like roughly line it up, right? It doesn't necessarily need to be perfect. This is actually a great example, right? Like if you want to get closer with like very specific stuff, you kind of need to force yourself to unsee what you've been looking at the entire time, right? This is like a great way to do it. Where now, if I'm flicking back and forth, you can kind of see like the areas that kind of stand out, right? Where the values, let's backtrack on this a little bit. The main thing that now stands out, if we do like the flicking between, right, is mainly like the color of the base, like the floor. So the floor color in your end is definitely way more towards the pink side, right, than it is here. Like it's definitely way more on like the orange kind of spectrum. So that would be like one thing to check out. And then what we were kind of talking about with these volumetric areas, maybe you could try like a little bit of localized fog, you know, like there is an interesting way where highly spammable on Twitter, like Chris Murphy did like a breakdown of like localized fog. I think oh, actually, since you're part of the community, just look it up in the PDF that I wrote. Like, I basically recreated it, and it's like an interesting thing of having just like a volume that you can control. You can place that in the level, and then tweak like localized fog inside of it, which is like a very interesting approach to maybe recreating some of this, right? Because what you want to do is you just want to capture that light coming in, and then just have it like stay a little bit longer in that volume, just slightly, you know? So I would probably have like, I don't know. I would definitely try with like some localized fog volumes. I mean, it's a suggestion, right? That's the first thing that I would do, and then if it doesn't work, then I'll try to figure out something else. Well, no, actually, backtrack a little bit. I would try this second. And first try bloom. See how far you're gonna go with that. And then if the bloom doesn't do what you want it to do, then look into the localized fog volumes. I think that's a better approach to it. Because you're gonna need the bloom for the windows anyway. Right? Because you kind of get that like blue foggy haze that's kind of in the scene, especially around like the top section. You see, especially around like the windows, you get this like nice blooming effect. Makes everything feel very dreamlike, you know, like almost, yeah, very dreamy. Has its dream quality to it. Oh, another tip. Volumetric clouds for the background. This is nothing fancy. This is built into Unreal. You can literally add a volumetric cloud and it will just give you like a layer of volumetric clouds. That's relatively easy to tweak, and you can get like the right background for your image. They look pretty cool, especially for an image like this. They look very nice. Yeah, honestly, I would definitely look at the values, right? I pointed out the floor color and like maybe some of the localized bloom, that kind of stuff. I think the colors in the entire scene, I mean, that's where a piece like this leans on, right? Like the colors. And yours is definitely more on like the blue spectrum rather than like the orange spectrum in total, right? I think if you wanna have a good look at that, like a look at the navigator under here, which is completely hidden by the chat. So let me, that's my face. So as this is kind of replicating what you would do when squinting your eyes, right? And it kind of is like a good indication of like where all the values kind of are, and if there's too much detail or maybe not enough detail in like certain areas. That's like another one of those tricks. Like if you're trying to replicate like a concept, this is a good way of like, again, squinting your eyes or making the image like very small or blurring it, like are all good ways to see if you're going the right direction. Because yeah, like it's a tricky one, right? Because I think in the concept, like all of this stuff, like all the railings are not in direct sunlight. But in your section they are, right? Like especially these areas. Like there's direct sunlight hitting it. And this is very subtle stuff, right? I know that I'm being like very nitpicky and it's very subtle. But that's what's important to like the composition in general. Because again, if we now look at what's happening in the little navigator, like you see that there's like a transition from, let me actually write it on the big picture, right? You have this dark shape which transitions into like a lighter shape and then a dark shape again. And then it does the same thing over here, same thing over here. And what that does is it adds contrast to the scene, and contrast is one of the things that will lead our eye a little bit more towards some stuff, right? So that's why in this concept they kind of just like blurred it out so that it becomes like a way softer, so that you don't get distracted by it, but you're like forced towards the floor more than just like the overall picture. You see what I mean? And the contrast between all the elements is kind of different. And again, this stuff is not easy, right? Because they have all the freedom of this is all hand painted, especially from a concept art. So we have the issue that we need to then replicate that into 3D. And some of this stuff doesn't make sense. So you kind of have to massage it to look like the concept. So it's definitely not an easy one. But yeah, honestly, like apart from all that nitpicking that I've been doing the entire time, basically, that nitpicking only exists because the foundations of the scene are very solid. And as I said in the last stream as well, like I think you're really nailing the texturing style of it. Like you're getting that slight painterly feel, but still like the realistic reflections and all that kind of stuff. Like it's very, very nicely balanced. So yeah, me nitpicking is a good thing. Let's call it that. Yeah, no, Emmanuel. I hope that helped. And thank you so much for putting up your work as well. Appreciate it. And good luck. I think you're getting closer and closer to the end. It's awesome to see your progress, man. It's very cool to see develop the scene. Okay. Let's move straight on to Nicole. Let's have a look at what Nicole wants my feedback on. More detailed block out, added materials. Storage. The storage uses a 1K texture sheet. See above. Oh, didn't add the storage. Okay. Yep. See above, and the bookshelf and the desk are sculpted individually. I hope that's okay for game optimization. Yeah. I mean, there's nothing wrong with the optimization side of it, right? Nothing at all. I'm gonna dive into a little bit what I wanted to say with that. But let me finish what you written down for us. So Nicole is asking for any general feedback. So the main questions I have is about optimization and poly count. I'm fairly confident with the storage that is optimized enough. But the big mesh is being sculpted. Is that okay too? I have them using a smart material and substance painter. Same smart material for all the wood so they match. Just color adjustments. I also have no idea how to model the lavender in an optimized way. Yup. Foliage is tricky. Right now there's too many polys. So any advice to fix that would be great. Okay. Man, there's so many ways to skin a cat, you know. Let's start out with the lavender, right? Let's start there. So with foliage, right? Like lavender is quite dense, right, in its topology. So what we usually do, or what is a common technique, if you want to make something appear round, but you don't necessarily want to spend like a whole bunch of topology on it, is instead of making it full geometry, which is going to be like hell to bake as well, is if we're looking at lavender. We go and just take like a little strand of lavender. Is it flowering or not? Let's take just a base strand, right? Let me see if I can find a good one. Dunk, dunk, dunk. Okay, and I'm just gonna do like a quick snip. Get that in here. And then I'm gonna just add that lavender on here. Alright, so what you want to do with a lavender piece like this, right? You can make the high poly like very, very detailed. So you could have like all the individual bulbs in it. So you could have all the individual bulbs in it. Right, so you're basically recreating the shape. And then what you do is you bake that down onto planes. And you bake it down in a cross section. So from the top down, you could have it look something like this, right? A very simple representation. But what that is going to do, if you have the core of it, if you look at any rotation here, like if you're looking at it from like the side, right? Like let's say we're looking at it from the side, so we're looking at cross section like this. Means that it's always going to have thickness no matter where you look at it, because you have the two planes basically, like no matter where they rotate, they're always going to have like some thickness to it. So that would be like the most optimized way to bake this stuff down, right? Because you're never really going to get there with Geo, but you can get that real easy and it's super optimized. And what you can then do, you don't have to bake it on like straight planes, right? You bake it onto shape like this, and then you would cross that with like another shape that looks exactly the same. And the cool thing about this is you can have your high poly just like in the middle of your two low polys, and then just bake it all down onto a plane, or like on those two planes. And then you get like different sides of the high poly, right? So no matter where you rotate, you're getting like a different side of the lavender. So that would be the high poly, and then this would be low poly. That's like a very optimized way and a very simple way of baking it down, right? You just need to make sure that your low poly encapsulates like the high poly, and then you're good to go. So the entire lavender is planes. Yep. Yep. And then, especially because you're looking at it from the side, right? You could, it depends, like how many strands do you have here? Like how many individual ones? Like let's say 3, right? So this would be like, what is that, like 3x2? Let's say all of these are just like little planes, right? You don't want to bake like the whole bush onto it. I think it could still be nice to have like multiple planes that kind of like intersect in like different rotations, because again, like these planes, they kind of give the feeling of them being fuller than they actually are. Right? You want to retain like the 3D-ness as much as possible. And depending, this is like an additional tip, right? This has nothing really to do with your use case here because you're looking at it from the sides. But let's say you would lay them down onto the table. Then you're kind of looking onto the planes, and then you break the fake effect that's going on, right? So what we then have to do is we introduce like an additional plane like right in the middle, and then bake the top down as well, so that now we're covering 360 roughly, right? So you see how this can be used in like different ways. And if you want to get more detail, you could have more planes as well. Like you could have 3 planes. Let's say this would be the base, and then if you're looking at it from the bottom, you could have like a plane in the middle, like intersecting with it. And then if you want to get more fidelity out of it, you could have something like this with a plane in the middle. You know? So you might have to tweak it a little bit depending on where you're going to be looking at it and how you're going to be looking at it. But yeah, a very simple technique to get these lavender bits. Thank you. No worries. No worries. And then also you can don't apply it to the garlic, right? The garlic is not going to be relevant, but you can apply the same thing to the leaves as well. You don't need this amount of topology to make things look good. What you would usually have is you would have like a very simple like plane. Right, let me see if I get the topology good. And then just throw an opacity map on there, right? And this simple thing right here, this simple setup, you have all these, let me take green, you have all these points, like all these vertices in the middle. Don't waste them, right? Like what you could do if we put this in front view, you could have something like this. Right? Where like these points become this again. So it gives like more 3D with like, again, very simple shape here, right? And then you just bake the high poly down on that. The simplest way to do it, again, simple setup technique, is don't bake them down as if they were in the scene, like hanging from like a leaf, but have them just like separated out somewhere else in the scene. Make sure that the texture looks good on there, and then just map it onto it. Way simpler than trying to bake it like at weird angles, like already in midair. That makes sense. So yeah. So you would have like simple geo with opacity. And you're good. Same can be applied to this one as well. And then the garlic, you have like a nice looking garlic here, so that's looking good. You can apply the same thing with these ivy leaves as well. At least I have the high polys. Exactly. I'll see if I can add a couple of leaves. Oh, oh my god. I'm so sorry. I stepped on my dog's tail. I'll see if I can add a couple of leaves and then stuff into an atlas and bake it that way. Yeah, like all this kind of stuff like that you're making here is perfect to make into an atlas, right? Like you could have like a sheet with like all the plants that you would need. Is you could have like your ivy here, right? So like maybe a couple of bits of ivy here. Then you would have like, let's say, just a section of like stem, right? So you can map these things onto it. You can reuse the stem here as well. That can just be like the same texture, or maybe you add like a second strip, right? What else do we need? We got like a couple of sections of lavender. And then we got like these couple of leaves as well, where you probably have like smaller leaves, and then you have like the bigger ones. And then you just have like one atlas for all bits geometry. Right? That's exactly how I would approach it too. Progress! Hell yeah! Hell yeah. I know, foliage is a headache, especially in the beginning, but once you get used to it, it's relatively simple, right? Like a lot of it can just be baked down to like flat stuff, and then once you have the flat stuff, you just cut it out again, and then you can make it like more 3D if you wanted to. That's the way that I approach it. Like I would probably bake everything down and then cut it out again, make my geometry, and then like 3D warp it or however I need to have it look, you know? So for a quick overview there is like make your high poly, bake to plane, then texture to plane. This is where we literally just add the texture to the plane, right? And then we cut them out. And then once we have the cutouts, what I usually do, again, these are like very small tips. Store the cutouts and then duplicate it again. And then manipulate them in 3D. This way you have a backup. If you like manipulate them in the wrong way and they don't come out looking good, you still have a backup with like all the cutouts. And that would be the workflow. So if you break it down to this, like it's actually pretty easy, you know? Pretty easy. The cross-section tip is so useful, wouldn't have thought of that. Yeah, so for people that don't know, I did foliage, right? I worked when I was working on Planet Zoo. I did a lot of foliage there. Well, a lot. I did quite a few things of foliage there, and we used that trick a lot, like on a lot of stuff. And you see that in modern games too, right? Like especially if you go look at flowers, like what is that? Like a daisy flower? Like the only thing that's happening there, if you look at, because you're looking mostly down to flowers, right? It's not a cross-section technique, but they just have like this for like a single flower, and they just pull like the middle point down so that you get like a more 3D nature, and that's it. You know, and that has like your nice flower on it. Right? And then they literally just put like a flat plane underneath it for like the stem, and then they're good to go again. Sounds easier now than whatever I was gonna do. Yeah, that's the thing, right? Like with new stuff, like your brain gets racing, and it can most of the time be done in a simpler way. Okay. Let's move on to the second thing that we need to talk about. Optimization. Oh, let's have a look at the texture first, right? So the main question there was if it's okay to use a unique sculpt for the table compared to the trim sheet or like the tileable that you're using for the rest of it. That's totally fine. Optimization wise, no issues at all, right? Like just the only thing there is that you need to make sure that if you're doing like a unique texture, that you make the most of it. So what I would say, because this is the texture that you have now, right? Which is looking nice. Nice and stylized. I like it. This almost looks the same as what you have on here anyway. Right? So what I would do is actually push the sculpted stuff way further, like in terms of detail, compared to some of the other stuff in your scene, right? Yeah, so that's the storage one, right? Like the texture that we're looking at here, Yeah, sorry, that's exactly what I mean, right? I know that this is a storage one. I'm just using that as an example that this texture almost looks comparable to what's going on with the desk. And that's the thing, like I'm talking about like how relatively, I know that you did like some other stuff to it, right? Like change the color, but they look relatively simple, which I think, not simple, similar. So what I think you can do if you make like a unique asset, you need to make use of the extra time and texture detail that you can put into it, right? So like go a little bit crazy, right? Like have, instead of having these like very rough planks, like just have a cutout here, add like a bit more detail into it, then maybe do like another one here, you know, and have like a nice sculpt. Maybe add like some cracks on top of it too, and maybe have like some, you don't want to make it too busy, right? So keep that in mind as I say this. But like, you see what I'm saying? Like if you decide, basically what I'm saying, to make it really simple, if you decide to make it unique, it needs to look more unique than the other stuff in your scene. It needs to be worth it, right? So go crazy with it, right? If you're gonna do a sculpt on it, like make it look like really unique and make it look like the centerpiece of your scene. And make it look really nice. A unique asset deserves a unique texture. I was worried about going too overboard. I will add some cracks, so definitely, thanks. Yeah, it's a good point to bring up, right? Because you can't really go too overboard. And you're 100% right. That's also why I thought about like, oh, maybe it would be cool if you have like shavings, right? Where you can look at like the different layers of wood. Maybe that's a bit too much. You know, like maybe just keep it to like the bigger shapes. Yeah, I'll let you decide upon that. Yeah, cool. But like optimization wise, nothing bad with it, right? Like you just need to be able to justify why you spend like a texture on this asset compared to the next ones, or like to the other ones. And I think your thinking here is 100% right. I love that you picked the desk because the desk is going to be the focal point, right? Andrea saying, what about stains too? And potion bottles, etc. Oh, that could be cool. Yeah. Oh, that's a really good idea, actually. Because you have some stuff on here, right? Like maybe you could have like this spilling over and creating like a little... Oh, well, it wouldn't be in the crack, wouldn't it? Like a little spill? Magic spill? Pretty cool. And I think if you're doing that, if you're making that a unique asset, you have the room to add these unique details into it. So that's a good idea. Great suggestion. Let's see. Fairly confident with the storage and its optimized enough, but the big mesh is being sculpted. Is that okay too? I have them as student ruler. Yeah, we discussed the lavender. Yeah. There is one thing, but this is going to be tricky because it is definitely like a more elaborate setup. I mean, it's a little bit more technical. I'm going to say it anyway, right? And it's up to you to either invest some time in it or not. But what I'm going to be talking about is the ultimate trim technique. So the So if you look this up, you're going to find like a video about this technique. But what this basically comes down to is that you, well, can you do it actually? Let me see. You know what? I'm just gonna leave that there because I don't think it's worth it. So I'll give you like a quick overview why I think it's not worth it, right? So the ultimate trim technique is a way where instead of adding bevels to your models, you add the bevels inside of the texture instead. So what that consists of is, let's say you have your texture, right? And this is like one piece of wood, right? That you added onto your texture sheet. What you do is you add the bevels inside of the texture itself. And then if you line up two assets with this mapped onto it, then the normals, like this edge is basically going to transition into the next one. I'll do like a side look. So let's say, so this is like a side look, right? Like normally what happens is if you have no bevel in your texture, this is what it would look like, right? And like this is going to be, that edge over here is going to look really ugly. So what this technique basically does is if you build that bevel into it, that's going to happen. And because they're both like 45 degrees, they transition into each other at this point. I know. This is getting technical and confusing, right? I'm trying to simplify it as much as I can. That's also why I was so hesitant to talk about this stuff. But I want to give the information out there anyway, right? So what you can basically do with this technique is you can remove all the bevels here and like move them into your texture instead. So how you would do this is if you bake down like a section of your trim sheet down onto a flat plane, you add those bevels into your geometry. So let's say we're looking from the side again, right? This is one of your wooden planks. The only thing that you need to do is have bevels here that are 45 degrees. And then they're going to transition into your texture when you're baking them down. And that will give them the appearance here if you line them up with like other sections. With other sections that use the same kind of texturing style, right? Again, last thing I want to say here, it's a cool technique, very technical. So if this is freaking you out already, don't do it. Just stick with the bevels for now and explore this in the next project. Because it does get pretty technical. And honestly, like the only thing that you're going to get out of this is being able to remove those bevels. And I don't think your poly count is too outrageous at this point. Because the rest of it's fairly optimized, right? So. And you also create edge decals like this. No. Usually what you do with edge decals is you have them on like a corner, and then you bake the whole corner down. Because ideally you want like the base information to transition. So that's kind of a different thing. I mean, if for edge decals, I would probably just like make like strips of damage, right? Just sculpt them and then just bake them flat down. Like usually the correct technique will be that you bake them down onto like a 90-degree angle, because then if you wrap them around a 90-degree angle, the normals are going to be fine as well. But yeah, that's a totally different thing. So for this, I think we're good, right, Nicole? I think I would ignore the ultimate trim technique. I would oh, wait, hold up. A couple of quick things here. If you're not using geo on this side, or it's not like it's not adding anything to the geometry, to like the silhouette here, try to call them out where possible. Right? So where's like a good example where we can do this? I have a good example somewhere. Let's see. This is rounded. Yeah, so let's take this thing here, right? So imagine if this line is continuously running through, right? Which it is. If you don't use it on any other part, what you can do is where you have like a section like this, you just like merge them here to this point. And then you basically remove like all these sections. You can do the same thing here. Right? And then you can possibly do like the same thing even here, connect them to both sides. Right? And then you're saving like 3, 6, let's say 9. You're saving like a bunch of vertices, right? Because you have the bevels on the edges as well. But all that geo is going to be gone, and you only need it to define this silhouette here. That's option 1. The other option is to just make more with this geometry here, right? Like, I would potentially like move this whole selection up so that you have like 3 cuts here, and then do something with the geometry on this side as well, right? So that these edges kind of transition into like a different detail on this side, and then you could even still clean up like the center pieces, right? So this one would go here, and these two would go there. Oh wait, this one still not connected. So your geo at this end will look something more like this. You don't even need this one. Plenty of stuff to work on. I'm on holiday next week, so I'll have to work on it later. Yeah, no worries. Thank you so much for popping in, Nicole. How did Nicole handle the trim sheet for the end pieces? So this is the texture that she made for. She doesn't have dedicated end pieces, so just look in using like a continuous texture. That might be an interesting thing to bring up, Nicole, if you want to push this further, like have separate end pieces. Like normally what you would do with a trim sheet, again, this is the last thing that I'll bring up, right? If you wanna have like a trim sheet, oh, continuous, last quick thing over here. Right, so we have the trim sheet here. However, it's not really like a continuous trim sheet, because a trim sheet usually continues on all the way, because the benefit of that is that you can then map stuff. Hi. Want to say hi? The benefit of that is that you can then map stuff like outside of the 0 to 1 space without having to worry about like any other detailing or like any other texture blocking it, right? Because that's where the name trim sheets come from, right? Like you have a trim and you can just map like really long strips on top of it. Like it doesn't matter how long they are. Because the texture just continues in like one dimension, right? Like it will continue forever in this way and continue forever in that way. However, because you have this trim here blocking the whole wooden section, like you can't tile this anymore, right? It stops the tiling from happening. So a fix to that is just rotate this 90 degrees and just have it in line with the other wooden pieces, right? Because this is the only thing that kind of stands out. So that would be like a good shout to do. That's why trim sheets look like trim sheets. Because you want to have like a setup like this. Right, so this could be your metal. That could be the wood. And then you could have like a strip of rope. A strip of something else. And then maybe if you want to combine unique stuff into it, you could add like an end piece here. Like these three things, they could basically be end pieces. Or cap pieces. Right? And they would be used like if you have like a wooden plank. They would be used on these end pieces. So they would have like, I don't know, like a little wooden structure that kind of comes out of it, right? That would be on those end pieces. And then the only thing that doesn't tile are these end pieces. But the rest of it always tiles, so you can make like a rope that's like really long. You don't have to cut in like additional sections because you can just map it on this trim over here and it can basically run forever if you wanted to. Nicole, I'm gonna apologize for the information overload. It was a lot today. So take your time with this, right? Enjoy the vacation first. Let this all sink in. And if I can help with anything else, just let me know. And thank you so much for putting up your work as well. As always. I would fix my issue with the rope now, to be honest, and that's all good. Awesome! Yeah, thank you so much, Nicole. And enjoy the holidays as well. Okay, next up, we got Paula. Thank you for the feedback, no worries. Paula, it's been a while since we've spoken about this. It's cool that you did like the comparison, like we talked about last time. It's cool to see. Yeah, this is very interesting, right? Because I was looking at this comparison and it's very interesting how you decided to approach it. So you have like an RGB mask here. Yeah. I think the mesh, when it comes to like the density that you would need for vertex painting, right? Because that's why you're adding like all this additional geometric density to it. It's a little bit too much. Like, you can get away with like very small increases. Yeah. Wait, was this the last one? Because I remember that you had like a really big map in there too, right? Oh, okay, I see. Yeah, because you had a 4K map in there, right? For like the RGB mask. Yeah, this is way better in terms of like resolution. Yeah, this is cool. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's the way that it usually works, right? Because an RGB mask doesn't need to be as high detail as a normal texture, because it's then usually blended in the shader with some other stuff, right? Like you saying with a grunge. So that's definitely a good shout. Yeah, it's cool though. What specifically do you want my thoughts on, Paula? Like about the comparison between the two, or how it currently looks? Let me know if you want like anything specific there. Like a whole bunch of materials. Like a 1K material. Looks as well. Nice one. And the whole presentation, please. Yeah, I mean, it looks interesting, right? I think some of it is it's a bit on the flat side, right? If you're going... Yeah, this is an interesting one. So, what am I missing currently? Because you have some dirt on there, right? I'm currently trying to think what could be cool, right? Because the majority of what I'm seeing here is just, well, it's not just, right? Is dirt, right? So like you have like the dirt color coming in. But it could be cool to use these maps more effectively. That makes sense? Like, because I'm only seeing like a lot of dirt in here, and I feel like you can push it way more and have like more variation. So you could have dirt. You could also have discoloration, right? Where like certain parts are older than some newer parts. Where so you would have like dirt, discoloration. You could even do discoloration without a map, technically. What else could there be? You know, I'm gonna let that over to you, right? But like, you could have something. You could have something like layer 1 is my dirt. Layer 2 is my discoloration. Oh my god, I can't write anymore. Discoloration, and then you basically still have like an additional channel in there, right? Yeah, because I am assuming, hard to tell. Wait, so break this down. So you would have steel is one material. You got rubber is one material. Orange, metal, and then dirt, right? Because you're saying like multiple textures here. These are all 1K, so that I'm assuming that they're tileable, right? So yeah. The grid. Oh, and the grid is a tileable too. Okay. Yeah, which makes sense, right? Yeah. Okay. I just thought of another one. So, rust. Right? So that could be another good one. And then where like stuff comes in contact with each other. That's where you could add some rust. Right? And then maybe here as well. Gonna have some rust here. I mean, a lot of rust under here could be, well, not rust. Well, maybe like a little bit of rust, right? That could be an interesting one. Also, so how would I describe that, right? So this is basically like using your RGB mask more effectively. Because I love the dirt, right? This is spelled wrongly, but who cares? So using the RGB mask, but I don't think the effect of it is actually hitting. It's actually showcasing that you have like multiple masks at the moment. If you know what I'm saying, like we're seeing the dirt. The dirt is very pronounced, right? But I have a hard time defining where like channel 2, like the green channel and the blue channel is used. Right, so try to push the variation between it all a little bit further. And I think discoloration in dirt could be interesting. Where discoloration could be like sun bleaching of the material or anything like that, and then rust kind of speaks for itself as well. Just to really push like the visual style of it. An additional thing that you could add on top of it. I don't know how far you want to push this. So it's just a recommendation, is add decals. Right? That's usually specifically mesh decals, right? Just to clarify that. So these are like separate bits of like geometry that you put on top of like your base geometry that are mapped to like decals. Right? So very commonly used in Star Citizen, for example, where they have decals to do like trims on panels and like do like little bit of bolts, right? So you would have like an inset here, an inset there, and then maybe there's like a panel line here, and then maybe there's some bolts here, maybe there's like a little thingy over here. Right, so that panel line could be like continuing. Right, because right now it kind of does feel a little bit too 3D-ish, and that comes from you're trying to be, well, you are really smart, right, in this way where you're trying to make like optimal use of like tileables and trim sheets, but the difficulty there is that you need to re-add a lot of that detail in with like you're doing, right? Like the RGB masking, and then potentially like all the decals and stuff like that as well. for the panel lighting, right? Because the thing that we're kind of missing here is like all the small subtle detail that you would normally see. That's kind of missing, right? Like if you look at the geometry, most of it is just purely decided by like the base geometry, right? So I would look into that. It can be like a really good way to add like additional detail to your assets too, on top of the stuff that already goes on with your asset currently, right? What do you think of some of the latest games with NVIDIA GPUs? Few games are washed out in terms of color quality in 4K Ultra HD, HDR, and their specific games not optimized. Got no idea. I don't have an HDR like 4K screen. Got no idea. Are the issues coming from the NVIDIA drivers? I mean, some games play smoothly without a problem. It could be several reasons. Windows 11, all the technical things. Yep. Got no clue. I have no clue where all that stuff is coming from. I haven't played like any latest game anyway, so probably the wrong person to ask. I'm just making my own 3D stuff over here. But yeah, Paula, to come back to your thing, I think, yeah, just adding decals could add a lot of stuff. Presentation-wise, it's interesting. It's definitely interesting. I like what you're doing with the ground. The ground looks really nice. I mean, that's a nitpick. The ground looks really nice. The dirt that you have on it like makes the terrain like blend in like really well. So I like that too. Yeah, I think what you can do is just improve the lighting a little bit, right? Because what's usually done is that you have your key light, which is like your main dominant light, and then you have your fill light, which is basically there to like negate some of the shadows, like the harsher shadows, and then you would have a rim light on the back of the vehicle to highlight some of the edges as well. So usually that would be something like this, right? Very quick setup. So you would have like your key light here. Let's say your camera is over here, right? And you would have like a fill light, and then you would have like a rim light on the back. Right, like something like this. I mean, it's very quick, right? Like very quick setup. But I think the base that you have already is kind of looking good, right? I think you can just make stuff like stand out a bit more from the background by adding that rim light. I think that's the most important one here. Yeah, just negating some of the harsh shadows that are happening here. Be interesting. Yeah, no, the presentation is quite good. It's quite clean as well. I like it. I think just playing around with maybe going a bit darker as well could potentially be interesting. But yeah, like the lighting could definitely use some improvements here, and playing around with it, right? Yeah, but I think I'm gonna leave it there, Paula. I hope that made sense. So yeah, let me know if it didn't. Give me a shout out in the community chat. So today has to go. Great seeing all the projects. Yeah, a lot of good stuff on show today. Learned a few tips as well. That's awesome. Talk to you later, Sunny Day. Exams start next week, so perhaps next Wednesday I'll have something to show for feedback too. Nice! I'm looking forward to it. It's gonna be nice. Thanks a lot. Really helpful stuff. Yeah, no worries, Paula, and thank you so much for putting your work up there as well. It's glad to see that you're back. Alright, we're getting into the 2 latest ones. Let's have a look here. Oh yeah, Shiva, this is looking way better. Nice. I love how it flows now, right? It's way more interesting to look at. It's a great job. Great job. I like how it flows, yeah. I mean, the annoying thing, right, like with more flowing and organic stuff is that you have to watch out for sections like this. Yeah, these bushes are cool, and you got the ivy on the tree as well. Love those two. Very nice style, you know? Very soothing, very pleasing. I think... Yeah, exactly. It looks so peaceful. I love it. I think what you could potentially do, and this is purely talking about framing, right? If we look at this shot, is give the edges like a little bit more space. Because I feel... Oh, Sheila, you're in the chat. Good to see you. I feel like the subject matter is still a bit too much towards the edges of the frame, right? So you would probably want to push them like a little bit closer, or like, well, you don't have to move the scene, right? Like, let me make that clear. Like, what you could do is could even change like the field of view on the camera, or what you could actually do. I'm trying to think. So if you have like a wider camera shot, like if you go for, what is that? What would be like the quickest one? Quickest way to get... I'm basically trying to see if I can get like resets or anything like that for like dimensions, but don't know how to do that. Too dumb for that. So I think what we can do here is if you just like zoom out just a little bit and then add those. I think we discussed that last time, right? If you just have like a wider frame, that could help as well. Kind of want to divide the frame into 3 spaces. Kind of have, so like I'm seeing this gate being here, and then the shrine is going to be that point. Probably like a little bit lower, right? Just focus on it. Because right now I feel like this distance, and especially this distance here, it's not enough yet. So it's something to experiment with, right? Like this is coming from like a very, like I'm judging my feelings, right? Like if I'm looking at this frame, I kind of wish it was like a little bit more zoomed out. Or if you go for a 21:9 aspect ratio, that might actually help you fix your problems, because it's probably going to make the frame wider than it is. And it might just help you out. Yeah, awesome job though. Like, especially on making like the core of the scene like way lighter. Like, you can definitely feel that it's definitely here. Like, your focus is definitely like in the middle. Or like you stay in the middle, right? Like, you do a very good job of like capturing the audience now. Quite nice. Yeah. I like it. Maybe what you could try. Again, these are just like suggestions, right? So feel free to try them. Maybe you've tried them already. Like, make the red like a little bit brighter than it currently is. Because I feel just pushing that up a little bit is also gonna help you with like the composition again, right? Because you have like the nice lighting in the core of the scene already. And also I think just in general, like livening the center up a little bit more, like kind of keeping it in line with the same sort of saturation, or like the same sort of values that you can see with the grass. The grass feels like really bright and vibrant, but like the gates themselves feel kind of like a little bit more muted. So maybe if you adjust the gates and basically like all the red stuff, and bring the values a little bit up, it'll be like very interesting. Yeah. Yeah, that's how I'm feeling about it. Stuff looks really nice though. Got the nice flowers over here, love it. Oh god, yeah, the terrain dips are so annoying. I mean annoying as in like you usually don't have the resolution to play around with, right? Like the terrain resolution. So I'm talking about annoying as in like the amount of stuff that we had to do in games, like make walls like really thick. Because if you have like a steep transition in a terrain, like you usually need to cover that up with a very thick wall. Yeah. Can be annoying. No, I love this. I would love to see I would love to see a night shot of this where like all the little lanterns are lit up as well. Oh, that would be awesome. I'm not sure to keep the mountains in the back or to give more space to the sky. Oh, that's a good point, actually. Also, did you just scale up rocks from the scene and put them in the background? I love it if you did that. Yeah. I can tell because I've done it too. Yep, I definitely done that stuff too, so especially if it's just like a background thing, right? Like pfft, who cares? Just put it in there. No, that's cool. About your question though, so the way that I would look at this is, and we did talk about it a little bit last time as well, but not that in depth, I think, is you have... Wait, is there like a better screenshot? So maybe let's use this as an example, right? So you have your scene is kind of building up into this, like if we really simplify it, right? Like in this triangle. And what I then like to do with the background is kind of invert that triangle. So you would have something like, what's the tallest mountain? So let's say the tallest mountain is here. You would then do something like this with the rocks in the back. right? So you would have like a tall mountain here, and then it would kind of taper off, and maybe there's like another tall mountain here to kind of break it up. Then you would still have the background, but you get the nice silhouette from your actual building in here a bit more pronounced, right? Especially in this shot, because in this shot the mountains are kind of taken away from like the silhouette of the mountain itself a little bit. Like, and if you can simplify that, maybe even remove the tree behind here so that it really stands out, or maybe move the tree a little bit lower so that the roof has like a nice silhouette compared to the sky. That's the way that I would approach it. So that you have like your mountains tapering down and then running into, or like leading into, your focal point. Because then you get like this nice swoosh, you know? That's the way that I would probably do it. But that's good though, because I think if you already notice it, right, you kind of have to play around with it. You kind of have to trust your gut with this stuff. Like, if you're not sure, in my case, like, it kind of means that your artistic self is kind of like, I don't know, right? So that means that you need to do something about it. So sometimes interesting stuff happens when you follow that gut feeling that you have. You can always easily revert anyway, right? Yeah, no, but this is amazing. Coming together really nice. I love it. Love it. I'm gonna leave you with one last thing. Again, don't have to do this. I don't even know if that's the thing you want to go for. I'm gonna say it anyway. There's if you're doing this in Unreal, which I think you are, there's something called Z-up shaders. Might be something to look into. Because what that does, it will basically look at your object and project down, like, down onto an asset. And you can then use that as a mask to do, like, moss on top of shit. So what you can, like in this case, what you can use that for is that, let's say the top face is here. You could automatically, like, project moss on top of it. So that the tops of these rocks are, like, covered with moss. And you can also use that same trick to do it on top of these things too, where like the top faces all get covered in moss, like all this stuff too down here. Could be something to look into, you know. I think it might make the scene a little bit too messy. That's why I was kind of hesitant to talk about it, or like to bring it up. But it could be like a very interesting thing to just look up, you know. A little magnifier here. Let's go. Could be an interesting thing, just to expand your knowledge as well, and to maybe experiment with some cool stuff. And yeah, thank you so much for sharing your work, Sheila. Like, I really appreciate it. And this is coming along like awesome. So I'm looking forward to seeing what you're gonna do with it in the next week. And thanks so much for sharing it as well. Thank you, no worries. Thank you too. And then we're gonna dive into the last one here from Alan. Let's get some context. Let's see what Alan is asking. Alan is asking, currently editing my presentation images, but would love some feedback on it. Okay, let's have a look at the topology first. Topology. I love that you're showing this off, right? That you're adding it to your portfolio, because showing game art is important. But in this case, what you need to do is probably still optimize some stuff on this though. And this is a tricky one, right? Because I don't think... So I'm debating this, right? Like, either this is not worth showing off, because the stuff that I see here is more to your detriment than to your benefit. I know that I'm saying it kind of plainly at this moment, but I think if you want to show off a wireframe, it would be good to show off that you cleaned it up a little bit as well. Like this remesh stuff, that can be like way more optimized, especially these things, right? Like you can definitely cut that out manually and to make it like really clean, and then it might be like worth showing off. So I would say I know I'm putting it quite bluntly here, right? Like clean up or leave it out, because I think if you this doesn't impress me really, right? Like if you wanted to show this off, I think you would have to like do some manual retopologizing and like clean it up that way, or just leave it out, because then I know that you just did like a Z remesher kind of stuff, right? Which is fine to a certain degree, right? But I think you can still even optimize it more than the stuff that we're seeing here, because this is still quite dense. Right, so make sure that you're showing off like the best that you can do. Sculpt is nice, love it. What you could do for this is, because you gotta think about dimensions, right? Like you usually have more horizontal space than vertical space. So what you could actually do in terms of presentation, if you go for like 21:9, like a cinematic aspect ratio, right? Then you could have like 3 of them like next to each other, like in different rotations, right? Like you could have like the angle here, this angle here that we currently have, and then maybe like a back angle too. Right, and then apply that to these versions as well, because the way that's currently presented, let me have a look at the ArtStation post, right, is that you have a render from the front view, a render from the back view, and like a rotating one, right? But ideally what you want to show off is just having like one nice presentation, or maybe open up with the movie, right? And then have like the renders laid out, and then kind of follow that consistency throughout the whole post. Again here, right? Like it's cool that you show this off and there's like a lot of detail in the sculpt, but you can lay them out nicer and more consistent within the entire post. So I would probably do something like talking about the presentation of things. Right, you would have movie first, like the little rotation, and then you would have like this is basically like the same thing here, right? Like 3 view, sculpt, or like no final, right? Final. Oh, I can't do that like in Photoshop. Over. So 3 view final. You would have your finals first, then your sculpt. Oh, wait. This one needs to go. Preview sculpt, and then you would have like your game art stuff, right? Like your game art breakdown. Which in this case would probably be something like, let's see. You would have like your texture maps over here. Maybe one of the objects over here and then another one over here. Right? Where this is the wireframe. Oh wait, let's actually do this. These two are wireframe and they have like the little poly count thingy at the bottom of them, right? And then these are like your texture map. Like your texture map breakdowns. Right? Because you want to keep it very concise. So you have a movie, you have your finals, you have the sculpt, and then the game art breakdown, which is just like one page. 4 things that they need to look at, right? Very, very condensed and very, very to the point. Like you're not wasting like a bunch of time here. Which is what you want, right? Like people want to see like all the cool shit. Because now, like you have like a bunch of pages, but they're basically all showing the same thing. Right? Like you can condense and like pack more information in here if you wanted to. Yeah. I'd say that's it if you wanna talk about the presentation of it, right? And then kinda think about like how to present your work as well with like what we said before with your object in the middle. You have your rim light in the back of it to highlight the edges. And then you have like your key light here, which is your main dominant light, which can be like the same thing that you have currently set up. And then you would have like your fill light over here. Just to kill some of the shadows, right? Like so think about the lighting setup. Going to deny a light bulb, but it's not working out. Yeah, so that's the way that I would approach it. Or I would recommend you to approach it too. I do see that you want to push the game art, but like the game art thing needs to be clean, right? And then the presentation on your portfolio just needs to be like very clean and to the point as well. And I think then you're in like a really good position. So hope that helps, Alan. And good luck with that. Keep me in the loop. All right. And that's gonna be it. I know that I'm kind of cutting this one short, but we do have a watch party like going on in the community, so we're gonna check out the PlayStation Showcase. And I still need to go and walk the dogs. So I'm gonna say thank you so much for all being here. I appreciate it. Like I feel like a lot of good conversations happened today. I appreciate everyone being here, showing off their awesome work. And yeah, if you like this, drop a sub, drop a like, all that good stuff. And then I'll see you next week for some more feedback. Have a nice evening, everybody.